If you would like to sponsor the show or advertise on the Mythicist podcast, you can do so by going to www.mythicist.me and click on Sponsor the Show for more info. If you would like to support the show financially, you can do that also by going to mythicist.me and become a monthly supporter. We appreciate your monthly support. You are now listening to the Mythicist podcast, your portal to the paranormal, streaming live at mythicist.me, your hub for all things spiritual, esoteric and paranormal. And now, your host, TruthSeekah.
Hey, what's up? This is TruthSeekah, and you're now listening to The Awakening. Tonight, we're going to be speaking with James Gilliland of the ECETI Ranch. I've been following James's work for probably about 3.5 years now, checking out some of his videos on YouTube and checking out some of his documentaries that he's been involved with. And he has some really interesting footage on his site and some awesome pics and some different information that he's been featuring on there. So like I said, I've been keeping up with him for about 3.5 years. Been looking forward to talking with him ever since. You can check out his website at ECETI.org. It's ECETI.org. It stands for Enlightened Contact with Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And we're going to be talking about that tonight. What does that mean? And we want to get feedback from you guys. If you guys have questions and comments, we're going to be taking calls in a little while. So I believe without further ado, we have James on the line. Are you there, James?
I'm here.
Hey, how's it going, brother?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Just got a fat cup of Joe going and some Lotus incense burning. Ready for some conversation tonight, man.
Sounds good.
Excited. Like I said, I've been following your work for about 3.5 years and checking out a lot of the footage and stuff and really being drawn to it and having my own experiences as well. And really, whenever somebody's having their own experiences, they just look for somebody that they can reach out to and, relate to, somebody they can talk to. And when I started seeing craft over my house and in different parts of the country that I was in and seeing these craft, and I was led to your website and I was trying to contact you, and I actually got a hold of Nate. And this was probably, like I said, 3.5 years ago. I talked to Nate, and he actually talked with me and gave me some info and stuff and some different people I can talk to and some different resources. So it was a big help reading the articles that you've posted and keeping up with your work. Can you explain a little bit to the people who are new, who are, not that familiar with your work? Can you explain a little bit what ECETI Ranch is?
Sure. First of all, I think it's most important that people do have their own experiences, and then that way they can't be dismissed, or dismiss it. A lot of people even dismiss it within their own minds, even after they have the experiences. But it's much more important not to just listen to what somebody else says, but for people to do their own research and have their own experience, and then come from a place of enlightenment versus just going just throwing stuff out from the armchair, like an armchair investigator. But basically, we're more about empowering the individual and enlightening people to the vastness of their being, that they're not just a body and a personality, that they're really a multidimensional being. And, we've been around forever. And when we start realizing that, there's, I think that what they find, something like 50 million Earth-like planets recently with the new telescopes, and 200 billion suns in this little Milky Way galaxy alone, and there's over 500 billion galaxies out there. And we're just talking third dimension, let's go into the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh dimension on up. I think it's basically insane to think that we're it, that we're the only intelligent life, in the multiverse. But with that being said, people, it's hard for people to understand, but this has been going on since the beginning of time, and even before that, before time as we know it. And like the Genesis didn't just happen here on Earth. It's a story that goes, billions of years, into the past. And there are beings, some are hundreds, some are thousands, some are millions, some are billions of years older than us, and they're extremely advanced beings, and they're very spiritually advanced, and you communicate with them more through telepathy and intersensitivity and things of that nature. That's how you make contact with these extremely advanced beings.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about that a little bit more later on, about the telepathic communication that a lot of individuals are getting. One of the documentaries I've seen was the BBC presentation of your place with Danny Dyer. I thought personally that it was an awesome representation of not just seeing the craft and everything, but whenever he came, he had a spiritual experience and said, you know, he kind of bit off more than he can chew. He thought he was coming just to see some craft, and he ended up having a personal awakening. I thought that was the best representation that you could give. Can you tell us a little bit more about that documentary that was filmed?
You know, we had a lot of fun with Danny while he was here, and he's, I don't know, he had called himself a Cockney something. I don't know what he did, but bloke, coming here, and he said, I don't know much about. I just really want to investigate UFOs and things like that, and he goes, I've been all over the world, looking for these UFOs, and he did. He went everywhere, and he didn't really see much of anything. But when he came here, he said he was on UFO overload because we just showed him ship after ship after ship, and it was quite an experience for him. But watching his transformation, I thought, was very important, because here's a guy that kind of came out of social consciousness and kind of city consciousness, the fast life, and things like that, went through a huge energetic and spiritual transformation, and then to prepare him, so he could actually have these experiences. So it's a lot different than just seeing a light flying in the sky. When you're sensitive and you connect with these beings, there's an energetic connection that happens, and sometimes you have to be prepared for it. We have to rise to the occasion if we're going to be, working with very spiritually and technologically advanced beings.
Every time I've seen craft, I've went out and seen them, it's always get this feeling of self-empowerment and the self-betterment. It's like, if you want to continue this, you need to take care of yourself. You need to meditate more. You need to eat better. You need to stop doing this and stop doing that. A lot of people are seeing UFOs. I mean, they're all over YouTube. People are having increased sightings every day, whether it's ships that are from the Earth or from our government, or if they're from another galaxy, another planet, plasma ships, light ships, whatever. What can you say about the spiritual empowerment as far as spending time in prayer, spending time in meditation to actually increase these chances of seeing them, or actually being more receptive to them through prayer and meditation techniques?
It's very important to have a spiritual component to this, because people don't realize you actually see with your brain. Your eyes are picking up billions of bits of information, and they have the capability to see into other dimensions as well. But what we do is we siphon all that out, and our brain chooses what we see, what's useful to us. And this has been proven over and over again. But, there's stories about it. When the first ships came, to the Americas, and they couldn't see them. They couldn't see the ships parked out the harbor because they didn't have any reference points, but the shamans saw them and knew they were there, and pretty soon they started, as they got accustomed to it, they started seeing it, and they've done tests, with cats, where they raise cats in a room with a whole bunch of horizontal bars in them, and the other cats in with a room with a bunch of vertical bars in them, and when they switch rooms, the cats that were raised in the horizontal room couldn't even see the vertical bars and kept slamming into them. It wasn't part of their reality. So it's so important to realize the better saying is that I'll see it when I believe it versus I'll believe it when I see it.
When you talk about making contact, whenever you hear the term contact has begun, people want to know what you're making contact with. What have you seen that you're making contact with? I mean, because a lot of people, as soon as they hear it, they're going to think you're channeling, demons and things like that. There's a real negative connotation that goes with it. I mean, are we talking beings that actually live on another planet? Are we talking angels? Are we talking fairies? I mean, or just a little bit of all of it?
Yeah, there's an old saying, contact comes with enlightenment. And if you go into all the old Vedic scriptures, even the Bible, it's very clear there. There's frescoes all over Europe with undeniable biblical scenes with UFOs in them. So, this has been going on for a long time. And, there's cave paintings that are 7,000 years old with UFOs in them. So this is like an ongoing thing. And so now we have to get to the nature of the beings, And it's hard to explain. I mean, this is the whole book in itself, but to understand the vibrational continuum is that there are beings that are pretty gross and disfigured, and they're as ugly as their consciousness, in the astral level, that mess with people. Some people call them demons and devils and whatever. There is a level where there is that going on. And, a good example is, let's say, the astral level or in the fourth dimension. On the lowest levels of the fourth dimension, you'll have some really creepy things going on and really controlling, manipulating, malevolent entities. But as you move up into the mid-levels, you'll have, everyday people that have crossed over that just don't have a body. And they're hanging out in there. And then you get to the higher levels in the astral level, you'll have teachers and guides and people that help people. But they're still stuck. They're stuck on the wheel of reincarnation because they have a cultural or religious belief system that excludes others, and they haven't, mastered judgment, or they're not in unity consciousness. They don't see the Creator in all creation yet. So you can get information from these beings and help from these beings, but they're limited. But when you go beyond that into the fifth dimension, that's when you get the enlightened beings. And some people could actually relate to the fifth dimension as the angelic or Christ consciousness. There's a lot of different names for it. And everybody has, every culture has names for it. But that's kind of what's going on. And so it's very important to learn how to heal unseen negative influences, how to maintain your self-authority, and to have, friends in high places if you're going to go playing around in these higher dimensions.
So basically, if you're living in a somewhat negative lifestyle and doing destruction patterns in your life, and you try to cross over, you try to go into the ether or whatever, you're probably going to experience some of the things that you've been entertaining, correct?
Pretty much, yeah. It's your consciousness will magnetize you to the plane that you resonate with. So if somebody's very angry and controlling and dominating and fearful or whatever, they haven't healed their past or released the past, they're going to go to a level that resonates with their frequency, and their frequency would be the sum total of the attitudes, emotions, and beliefs, that they're holding on to when they cross over. So it's kind of a perfect system if you really think about it. It's like, you're not going to see these really messed up, screwed up people get into the higher dimensions and make a mess there. And the people that have a loving, joyous life of service, to humanity and the earth, they're going to go to a higher level where those of like mind are hanging out, so they're not going to have to deal with the low-level stuff either. So it's quite an incredible setup, the way this is all set up.
I got an email from you a couple years ago. It seemed like, I know it was just the same time as the movie came out, The Fourth Kind. And I got an email from you, and you were basically talking about how Hollywood and everybody's about this fear stuff, and people are making money off of the fear, selling you fear, controlling you with fear, and that's totally not the agenda that you're pushing, and how it's basically, taking over ufology in a sense. So people like you, whenever you stick your neck out there to say, hey, they're not all bad, we've had some awesome enlightened contact with these, entities or whatever you want to call them. So I got the email from you, and it was saying kind of like you was wanting to kind of just focus on the spiritual aspects of the Kunlun and the spiritual work instead of focusing on the UFOs. I think you were kind of distracted or whatever with that. Can you talk about that a little bit, what you went through?
Well, yeah, it's basically what's going on. It's very sad, but most of the UFO community is highly infiltrated. And if you go and look at a lot of the board members, that are in ufology, that are, major conference holders and talk show hosts and things like that, you really look into their background and you'll see that they have either some kind of military intelligence background or, some of the people on these boards are card-carrying, CFR members, they're Council on Foreign Relations members. And so, they bring money into the equation, and it's called controlled opposition. So it's like they're going to feed you a little bit at a time, but the information they're going to be giving you is mainly going to be focused on the dark side. We should be very scared. We should be very weary. they're coming to slice and dice us and turn us into human pilaf, or they're going to control you, or all this stuff. And so they're going to experiment on you, abduct you, and so that is the major focus, where in the big picture, that's a really small part of the pie of what's really happening, because the vast majority of the contact is benevolent. There's a couple regenerate groups out there that have been causing problems, which are being cleaned up right now. And but the vast majority of it is benevolent, and the only threat they bring is a threat to those who have enslaved us through dependency, or the war and disease profiteers and things like that. That's the only threat that they are, and because basically they have healing technologies beyond imagination, and energy technologies and natural forms of healing. A lot of them can just do it with consciousness and energy, and they have fearless energy technologies, and they're peaceful. They live by universal principles, and universal law. So, they're a threat to the war industry and the pharmaceutical industry and the oil industry. That's the only threat, because, if we were to align with these beings, we would have the template for, universal peace and brother-sister love and freedom and prosperity for everybody. They live under unity consciousness or universal law, and they see the Creator in all creation. So they don't separate into cultural or religious programs and war on each other, and they don't destroy their environments, and it's all service oriented, because they don't they don't play the separation game that we play down here.
Yeah, I think that movie, The Fourth Kind, I didn't watch it because I was having my own experiences and I didn't want to throw that into the equation.
Yeah,
but I had some friends who watched it, and I just seen the spirit that it brought with it. A lot of fear and a lot of different, almost like some type of demonic possession type of going on, people being abducted and beat up, and all this crazy stuff that it was trying to push, and it really did into the consciousness of the people. I actually had some friends that I talked to who seen it, and it was a time I was having a lot of experiences, and they were just freaked out when I started talking about UFOs or trying to show them some or something like that, because they seen the movie and they didn't want to have nothing to do with it. They said that by just watching that movie, they opened up their lives to some different demonic encounters by just simply watching this fear-based movie. I just want to let everybody know who's listening that the writer of the movie and directors and everything came out and said that the movie was fake. All of it was set up. It was Hollywood. And they actually marketed it like it was real experiences and, real footage of them, working cases with people who's been abducted,
Yeah. And, it's probably, they probably got, a huge budget to do that. They probably had that all covered, by one certain agency or whatever to make a movie like that, because they put like millions and millions of dollars, probably even, I wouldn't even be surprised if it goes even further, to make movies like that. And it's all about keeping people in fear, keeping them from expanding, keeping them from making their own contact and find out what's going on, and keeping them in the enslaved through dependency program.
One of the movies that did it for me when I was younger was Fire in the Sky. Dealing with Travis Walton being abducted and beat up and having these experiments run on him. I don't know if you've listened to some of his latest interviews about what he says about that now, but his take and story on that whole experience is 100% polar opposite about what they portrayed in the movie.
Exactly, and I've talked to him before, and when I was on the circuit, I was doing a lot of talks in the UFO community before I found out how convoluted it is, but when that movie first came out, I talked to him about it, and he said that's not at all what happened. He said, basically what he told me is what, is his fault. He ran up to the ship, and the ship powered up, and the magnetic fields or whatever it drove it, just knocked him on his butt and stopped his heart. So they went whoops, and they didn't realize it. So they picked him up and healed him basically, and then dropped him back off.
Yeah,
and
that's amazing.
Yeah, and that was the story basically. And he did talk a little bit about I woke up on a table and they were putting me back together, and healing me, and there wasn't body parts and all that other stuff going on. It was a pretty clean and sterile, illuminated experience. It wasn't all bad.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing what they can do, with that whenever you sell the rights to them and then they take it and run with it,
I had a chat for, I won't even say who, because it's a very well-known person in the industry, but it was like for $300,000 sitting on my counter for them to do a movie about my life. And he said, all you have to do is sign the rights away. And I said, well, I want to be able to make sure that this movie is done correct, that it tells the real story, which is as fascinating as, truth is more fascinating than putting all the crap in there, And so I said, I don't want it to turn into a fear and suspense and shoot them up, and I knew that was where they wanted to go with it. So I told them, I said, I said there were suspenseful moments, with black helicopters and followed and chase scenes and stuff like that I've experienced. You could add that in there. But most of the contact was all just awesome. It was just blissful and incredible and very powerful messages about what we need to do, to clean up our environment and our planet and clean up our consciousness and, keys to peace and things like that. These beings almost sound angelic, when you talk with them. And so I wouldn't do it. I said, I'm not cashing the check. I'm not signing the papers. And they said, no way, we're not going for it. And I said, fine.
Yeah.
But I think, to me, it's more important to tell the truth. I'm not a real material person. I don't really care. It's much more important to get the truth out there and let people know that there are these beings waiting to assist us, but we have to rise to the occasion.
Yeah, I believe, these are the same beings that are mentioned of in the Bible and the other holy books coming down from heaven to help mankind out. When it talks about the us, let us make man in our image, and the word God in the Hebrew Bible is translated Elohim, which is plural, means more than one. So, and it says, let us make man in our image. Our church doctrine will tell you that the us is the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. But if you're really reading the context, we see the us mentioned again when they're talking about the Tower of Babel, and then we see in Genesis 18 and 19 where the us came down, which is said it was the Lord, capital L-O-R-D, the Lord God Yahweh came down with two other beings, and they actually came down. That was the us that was mentioned of. They actually came down and went and had lunch and ate with Abraham and his wife and everything, and then went on to do what they had to do. I think it is mentioned in the holy books that these are the angels. When you look into the sky, when you see those lights, those are the seraphim, the fiery ones that are mentioned of in the scriptures. Yeah, I totally believe that 100%.
In a fiery chariot, they spoke to the lights at the river Chabar. There's all kinds of things in there. Ezekiel is a very good one in there because it talks about how a shiny disc came out of the firmament. It had bronze feet like calves. It had fire and brimstone coming out from underneath it. And when it landed, it sounded like 1,000 rushing rivers. And then, out of it came the cherubim with wheels within wheels with flashing lights all around them, And you look at this nowadays and you go, boy, that was a big ship that landed. It sounded like 1,000 rushing rivers and had bronze feet, had metallic legs. It's very obvious. But if you go further into that story, you'll understand what really happened in the past because out of the ship, he told 6 men to go and destroy all the men, women, and children of Israel with their shattering weapons. And so if you go into a city, with a shattering weapon, people go, well, that was probably a hammer or something like that. You go, 6 men don't go into a city and destroy it with a hammer. That weapon was pretty nasty. It was some kind of a sonic weapon or a laser or something like that. And And then then they told a man dressed in all white linen to reach into the bowels of the cherubim and pull out hot coals and spread them around the city. Well, and then it said, henceforth, anybody who comes there will die a hideous death. Their hair and fingernails will fall out, and there'll be food for the raven and the beast. So you read that, and you go, wow, some guy in a white garment, protective garment, grabbed hot coals, spread them around the city, and everybody died of what is obviously radiation poisoning.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you're going, wait a second. Now this is the Old Testament. And so you've got, in the Old Testament, you've got this jealous, wrathful God who seemed to be flying around in this massive ship that forced people to worship him and children, you know, it was just unbelievable. You know, he went to the land of milk and honey, and they destroyed all the men, women, and children, bashed the kids' heads out with rocks and things like that. It's just incredible. Mm-hmm. Well, this is the Old Testament, and this is the God of the Old Testament. And that's what people don't understand, is that there's another prophecy where they said there shall come a great one that'll bruise the head of the one who bruised the head of man. And that was Yeshua, you know, ben Joseph. And there was 12 other masters and Yahweh that he was working with, and they came and they kicked out this other being that was the God of the Old Testament. And so now he brought a new covenant, which is an all-loving and all-forgiving God. And that's what people don't understand, is that there's actually two beings that were involved there. And it goes back deeper, but I don't know if people are ready for this. But, I mean, there's more information about this. But it split Christianity down the middle, because people have this jealous, wrathful God nobody can appease, you know, that's going to punish you and whatever. And then they have an all-forgiving, all-loving God, you know, and Jesus said, I don't judge thee, nor does my Father judge thee. Go and sin no more. He's saying, you know, forgive yourself and move on, you know, don't keep making the same mistakes, you know. So it's a whole different story. But unless people know the truth of what happened back then, they're going to be split in consciousness. They're going to be afraid of God and at the same time try to love God and connect with God, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah, we definitely see that. I mean, a lot of, you know, I think I just found bliss in really, you know, because I came out of the religion of Christianity and just found bliss now in just loving God and knowing that he loves me, you know. And, I mean, the simple fact is, if anyone's going to call themselves a Christian, I would think that they would produce the fruit that Christ bore, the love, the peace, the humility, you know, the forgiveness, the long-suffering, you know, those type of things. So whenever somebody comes up and they have those fruits, which that's how Christ told us to judge, by those fruits. That's how I judge people. I don't judge somebody by them coming up saying, you know, hey, I'm a Christian, this is my local church. All you got to do is hang around them for a little while, because eventually their true colors are going to show. Eventually you're going to partake of some of their fruit, and you'll be able to tell, is it fruit that Jesus bore, or is it fruit of the flesh, which is mentioned of in the scripture, which is envy, wrath, hatred, fits of rage, outbursts, you know, not being able to control yourself. These type of things are the fruit of the enemy. And I mean, there's a lot of people involved in the religion of Christianity, I mean, any religion, whether it be dealing with Islam or anything like that, who produce the fruit of the enemy, or the fruits of the flesh is what it's called. And a lot of people who are outside of Christianity producing the fruits that Jesus said to bear. So that right there, once I started judging people by that, and kind of just judging situations by that, to see if they're doing what Jesus said do, because there's a lot of people, you know, actually keeping his commandments, which is love, way better than anybody preaching it from a pulpit. And that right there kind of makes you scratch your head, you know, and say, okay.
Exactly. I've always felt that. It's all about frequency. And, you know, love and joy and bliss and service to others and things like that, that really raises your frequency. And if you live a life like that, you're emanating, you know, a really high frequency, and you're also going to go to a very high plane, you know, when you cross this one. And you're also attuning to these higher dimensional beings as well. So, you know, it's really all about frequency, but unfortunately a lot of churches teach fear and guilt and unworthiness and separation. And really, that's Antichrist consciousness. It's not, you know, that's the real Antichrist, when you are diminishing somebody, or you're creating a separation, or fear or guilt, all that separates you from the source. And, whatever name you want to give it, when people give it a name like Yahweh or Jehovah or things like that, these beings do exist. And the Elohim, is plural. It's gods. There are godlike beings out there, but we have to ask, who created them? Do they have a mother? Where did they come from? And get beyond that into the I see God as the one consciousness that encompasses all consciousness on all planes and dimensions throughout the multiverse, and it's just pure bliss, when you access it.
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny that whenever you look up the root word for religion, you get the word bondage.
Yeah, religion.
It has people to fight against each other and everything. Yeah. It's so crazy, man, but it's a process that a lot of people have to go through, and hopefully whenever they go through that, on the other side, they'll be able to help people come out of that. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm just trying to help people come out of the bondage of religion. It's crazy. It's a deep trap. So many people who are involved in it, and obviously, just look around. I was a Christian minister in the church since 2004, and then really started having these experiences and stuff, and studying it through the Bible, and started talking about them. And then I was called a Satanist, and I was a Christian minister or whatever. People started demonizing me for talking about this stuff and pointing it out in the scriptures and stuff. So it's real crazy. You just got to understand that people demonize what they don't understand, and you just got to understand that.
Yeah, it's black and white. Unfortunately, it's like what they know is white, and what they don't know is black, or it's good or evil. And unfortunately, the universe doesn't work that way. There's gray in between and all kinds of other levels. So, some people. That's what I think about too. Is some people out there is like, I don't expect everybody to be like Jesus, or Mary or the other masters. But at least try. You're gonna fall. And you're gonna make mistakes and everything else. But the thing about it is, if everybody was a carpenter down here, all you'd be doing is building homes, with no plumbing or no electricity or anything else. So you need diversity, and it's just all about being kind to each other, and eventually transcending all religious and cultural boundaries into unity consciousness, just seeing the Creator in all creation. It's really that simple.
But that's really hard when you have chains on you or you have goggles on that make you filter certain information a certain type of way. When you look at something, you see something negative or whatever the case is. It's real hard.
You just take universal law or universal principles, and you can apply that to everything. And basically, it's all about universal peace and brother-sisterly love and freedom and abundance for everybody. Those are the basic universal principles, and unity consciousness. Seeing the Creator in all creation, or the law of one, or the sacred circle of life, whatever you want to call it. But you just apply that to everything, and you can just start throwing out the garbage and the limitations. And it pretty much is that simple. It's just all about being kind to each other and the planet.
Kind of going back to the abduction phenomenon, I personally, after listening to a lot of lectures and stuff over the last couple of years, I haven't heard the term used to any cases of recent. Maybe in the early to mid-'90s, people were talking about abductions, and even before that. But now, whenever I hear anybody talk about UFOs or having contact, it's usually they call themselves a contactee or a UFO experiencer. I don't hear the term abduction anymore.
That's because it's pretty much phased out. There was a group here, people call them the Greys, that struck a deal with the government, and that was way back in the day. And it was an exchange for technology, and they said, we need to snag a few people and do genetic experiments. And they're a dying race, basically, and so they bred emotions out of their race, and they're just, all they care about is knowledge, and that's why they have big heads and real spindly bodies. And they screwed up in their evolutionary process. And so they realize that they're atrophying, they're a dying race, and so they're trying to breed emotions back into their race. And so they were using our genetic stock, in trade for technology, and they weren't too cool about the way they were doing it. They were trespassing on a lot of people's free will and things like that. But that's kind of phased out now, and the higher benevolent ones are here now, and they're saying no more. And the government is very involved in that too as well. So, and they learn from their mistakes and realize that the beings they're working with weren't honoring agreements and took way more people than were expected, and a lot of problems came out of that.
I also wanted to talk to you about the mountains. There's a lot of information about mountains. I've seen a lot of your videos with lights coming out of mountains and UFOs on top of mountains and things like that. Whenever I look in the scriptures, I see Jesus going to meditate, or, I see him going to pray. And it actually says he goes into the mountain and he goes on top of a mountain. And whenever we look at the Hindus and the Buddhists, they go into the mountain to meditate for hours, and they go on top of mountains to meditate for hours. And then we see footage of these different lights and spirits, or whatever the case it is, some of the stuff you are showing. I mean, what's the connection there?
Well, a lot of times the mountains are areas, they always talk about the wilderness, and nature doesn't judge you. You're away from all the psychic turbulence and all the other electromagnetic turbulence and everything else, and you get up in the mountains and the air's clean and fresh, and it's just a really high energy place to go that supports your own evolution, your own spiritual evolution. Nature is just awesome if you can get out in nature as much as possible. But that's pretty much what it's all about. And on top of that, a lot of the mountains have bases within them. And they're not what you think they are. If you could go into them, you'd be amazed at all the different beings that actually live within the interior of some of these mountains.
What's some of the techniques that you can suggest for people to do if somebody hears us talking about this kind of stuff and they want to know and they want to see UFOs, it piques their interest, they want to make contact with the angelic? What's some stuff that they can do? Because a lot of people get discouraged because, they hear these conversations and they've never seen anything, so it makes them doubt. We talked about how somebody can have their own experience and then they would know. They wouldn't have to believe somebody else's word because they know for themselves. What's some stuff that people can do before they go out to an open sky or a field or anything to actually look and see?
Yeah. First of all, I just want to cover this place a little bit. Is that we've had like triple PhD Boeing engineers and Lockheed engineers and Air Force base commanders, pilots, and air traffic controllers. All kinds of people have come here and have seen the ships, and they know it's real. So if people are still doubting it, it's been going on for 25 years here, and the evidence is just overwhelming for any reasonable mind. There's still the skeptics and the paid debunkers and the other people out there, but the evidence here is just overwhelming. So that should help them just to realize this is a possibility, this is going on, just by the caliber of the witnesses. The second part is once you realize that this does exist, and you're curious about it, one of the first things that I would recommend, and I've always done this before any spiritual practices, is to learn how to heal unseen negative influences and how to maintain your own energies, and so because there's an old saying, just because you're dead doesn't mean you're enlightened, and just because you're an ET doesn't mean you're benevolent. The vast majority are benevolent, but if you're going to play around in those dimensions, that you'd better, have some tools under your belt. So the first thing we teach here is we teach deep meditation techniques, but at the same time we teach ways of healing unseen negative influences and maintaining your own self-authority. And one of the best ways is just to have faith and make your own personal connection with Spirit, Creator, God, whatever name you want to give it. Or if you have a master, like Jesus or Buddha or Babaji or Mary or one of the other masters, is to always, bring them into the situation, connect with them and get a good connection going with them. And then once you have that connection, you can use these tools. And it's a very simple way of clearing unseen negative influences once you understand this practice.
Mm-hmm. And is a lot of that like unforgiveness and things like that?
Well, basically what you do, it's like a power tool. You plug it into the higher dimensions, and And then you just welcome the beings. When you start feeling something ugly or bad, you just welcome them in love and light. You tell them they're healed and forgiven, lifted and enlightened. You can tell them they're filled and surrounded in the Christ light or the Christ love. And then ask the beautiful many, to take them to their perfect place, to remove them. And if you have stubborn ones, you can just say, look, are you of the light? Do you come in the name of the Christ? If not, leave now, And you have to be a little more firm with them, and they do. They have to go. But when you invoke the presence of these higher beings, they automatically either heal or leave, and they get out of your space.
Yeah, that's about the same thing I did. I went out and I would go out and do that and just talk to God, really, just in my prayer time, just looking at the stars and wanting to see something. And a lot of people, I guess they would have concerns, and I guess it's only smart, to have these concerns. It's like, okay, so what if you're going out there and you see these ships or whatever, and you don't know who's on it, and you see something that's actually talking about people being abducted and things like that. So what do? That's going to discourage people from going out. I'll definitely say this. In the scriptures, Jesus said that whenever you pray, he said, if you ask your Father for a fish, he's not going to give you a serpent. If you ask him for a loaf of bread, he's not going to give you a stone. And if you're one with the Creator and you go out there and you say, okay, God, or whatever name you call on, I'm asking you to show me your divine messengers, your Elohim, your Seraphim, whatever the case is, he's not going to accidentally send you a demon or send you a negative entity to actually pick you up and abduct you. It don't work like that. And I'm saying it from experience. I've had some amazing sightings. That's the thing that's kind of kept me sane whenever a craft comes down real low, and the first thing you want to do is panic. But just know that, if you ask for something enlightening and something positive, he's not going to send you something that's going to abduct you and beat you up. I mean, that's just not how the Creator works.
No, that's a good point, because we say the mind in which you seek is the mind in which you connect. And so if people's minds are full of fear and aggression and all these other energies, unfortunately, which Hollywood puts out, that's going to create some serious problems. And the higher beings just are going to take the high road. They're not even going to contact you. So we have to heal the fear, and release the past and things of that nature. But it is important that, but somebody asked me about here. There's been contacts happening here for probably 500 years, because the Yakima Nation knows all about the beings. They have their legends. Kenneth Arnold lost sight of the ships when they landed on the western slopes of Mount Adams, and he coined the word flying saucers back in 47. So this has been going on a long time, a lot of contacts, but in most of the cases, the people ran. When they saw a ship or saw something going on, they ran, they hid. And they didn't walk out and check it out and go, well, okay, who are you? Why are you here? And that's something that we do, is that we heal the fear and clear out the old wounds and traumas and wrong conclusions, from past experiences. And so that way we can greet these beings, on the same level versus running away in fear, and which really they're not going to participate in. If you have fear, and if you're aggressive or things of that nature, or you're arrogant, they're just going to take the high road and they're going to stay up high. But if you lose the fear and you send love and joy and bliss out to them, and you're sincere and you say, I really want to know, I want contact, I want it, and they, I want benevolent contact. I want somebody that's going to enhance my life, to help me understand, the greater universe or whatever else. Just that's some real clear intention before you do it, and that's what you're going to get.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that should be everybody's prayer anyway. Everybody who's seeking to know God and to know about Him is just asking for help. Well, look, we got a couple calls here. You mind taking a few calls?
No problem.
All right, we got a call coming from Georgia. Not sure who this is. You there, caller?
Yeah. Yo, what's up, Derek?
Hey, what's going on, man?
Hi, James.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
Sounds like a contactee.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Actually, I have had spiritual contact. My awakening was December of last year, and I'm just gonna be real short about a couple of experiences. Actually, three experiences. Although I've had more. My first encounter was when I found out that I was a starseed, and you know that I came from different planets, and I got my third eye. That was the first chakra that was activated, and I was told I was from Sirius, and you know when I started channeling, it didn't freak me out, but it did make me nervous a little bit, and then like the more I kept thinking about them, and the more I got comfortable listening to Daryl Anka channel Bashar, I started listening to some of the things he was saying. You know, I started to feel more comfortable, and then like memories in my Akashic records, like me when I was 17, when I was a Christian, I remember like I used to always talk to God and Ascended Master Isu as a teenager when I was a Christian and everything, and so actually my first encounter was with Bashar, and I've had two lucid dreams. My first one was when him and his wife, they were both sitting on my bed. I can feel their feet and everything on my bed, and then I said, because I was dreaming, but I was up. So I said, Bashar, is that you? And he said, yes. And I said, give me a high five. And he slapped me a high five. I mean, I can literally feel his hand, you know? So that was awesome. And I can hear Anima talking to Bashar, and she's looking at me too and just smiling. And the second time, my encounter with Bashar was when he was sitting on my bed again, and he was asking me something, but I couldn't remember what it was. And then when I started getting involved with the Syrians, I actually found out that I have Syrian parents, Syrian brothers and sisters. They're my family biologically in a more extraterrestrial sense.
Yeah, have you seen the movie Avatar?
Yes.
How'd you relate to that?
I love that movie. I love those
beings. They exist. Those beings exist, and a lot of them are from that sector. They're Syrian and they're signs.
I believe you, because my mother, my Syrian mother, her name is Suwaja, and like she comes and visits me all the time, and then Ja and Jonah, they come and visit me all the time, even my Syrian brothers. So it's like when I get excommunicated from my family, and like they make me upset, they always come in my bedroom to give me comfort.
Nice.
You know, so I'm always happy, and I even have a girlfriend, but from another planet. But that's a different story. And then there was one time where my grandmother on my mom's side, she passed away, and I was almost to a point where I was gonna give up, you know, esotericism, you know, the occult, I was just gonna give up, the Kemetic science and astrotheology and everything. Mm-hmm. And I was just about to drop it until one day I felt the presence, but I didn't know what it was, and I found out it was her because a friend of mine was helping me channel her, and my grandma said that she was proud of me because I was becoming an authentic man, and that she loved my heart, and the only thing she wanted me to do was treasure my mom, because in my grandma's own words, my mom loved me dearly.
What's interesting is that when people cross over, they find out that the universe is much bigger than they thought it was, and it's much more diverse. And it's not just about, people getting a cloud and a harp, it's a lot bigger than that, and a lot more diverse. And they'll come back and they'll tell you, boy, I had no idea, how vast and awesome, the other planes and dimensions are, or the heavens are.
Well, you've had some experiences like that, James. You've seen a lot of different beings. I know you tell one story about you were walking and one appeared next to you and started walking beside you, talking with you or something like that?
Yeah, I was walking. I was having kind of a telepathic conversation with one, and you're always questioning when that's happening. You're kind of going, okay, am I really talking to somebody, or am I? And it was a beautiful information about, just how we need to just keep loving each other and stop judging and on the planet and take care of our planet, and things like that. And that they're very concerned about us and everything. And all of a sudden she just phased in, and she was walking right next to me, and she had a real tight, kind of a bluish silver jumpsuit on, almost like a spandex, very beautiful, blonde hair, Nordic looking. And then she just kind of phased out again. But I just went, whoa, that was interesting. And she just showed me herself for a minute, and then she kind of vanished again. But I've had a lot of encounters like that where they will drop in from another dimension just so I can see them and know that they're there and know that they're with me. And it helps reinforce the telepathic contact that's going on.
Let me ask you this. How do they feel whenever you're trying to make contact, when you're trying to live a, set-apart lifestyle, and you do have these negative things in your life that you're doing, whether it's an addiction, whether it's drinking or drugs or whatever, your addiction is? How do they feel when we keep doing these things over and over? Are they for the most part rooting for us to overcome like the negative things in our life? I mean, do they stick around whenever we're doing something bad, or how does that work?
Well, they've pretty much mastered patience, or they wouldn't be here, because they would have given up on me a long time ago, I'm sure, some of the stuff I've done. But I think about that. I asked one of the beings that her name was Blajee, and she's a Pleiadian, and she's about 2 million years ahead of us in evolution. And, she's come back in time, and she's a master teacher that's 2 million years advanced from us. And, I asked her, I said, well, we must look like monkeys, to you, compared to you. And she said, no, we understand our past, we know our history, and we just don't look at you that way. We just see you as we're like your elder brothers and sisters, coming back to advise and guide you, but we're not here to do everything for you, but we're just trying to get you to make the right choices and go in the right direction, inspire you. And then I asked her too, it's really interesting because I'm like a archaeologist, or I wouldn't say, I'm trying to think of the right word, but I was digging into I'm into a lot of psychology and things like that. And so I said, well, I'm trying to understand, what would happen if we connected, if we were in a relationship? And it kind of goes, not going to happen. And so I wasn't offended by that. I go, no, I'm trying to understand the dynamics on what would happen, because, you've transcended, jealousy, fear, all those programs, that bind people, and you're beyond that. You just love unconditionally, and I'm just saying, how. And then we started a conversation about it, and she said, your cultural training or whatever, or indoctrination, you'd have to let go a lot of that, because she said in a telepathic society, there is no lying, and there is no jealousy, and there is no, love is love, and we don't have all the boundaries that you have to deal with. And so she said you'd have a lot to overcome. And so it was a really good understanding about that on how our culture works. Is there's so much of it is based on fear and control and contract, and it's not free, and it's a lot of it's just, the whole thing is based on fear and controlling somebody else because of fear, and signing contracts to get people to behave in a certain way that might be totally contradictory to their soul and their soul evolution. So it was quite an understanding, on their culture versus our culture.
You were talking about the telepathic communication. I've had the contact for a couple of years now, and I've received messages telepathically. Can you explain a little bit how that sounds, or how you would get that? To me, it's more like that still small voice that you get, almost like a knowing, or almost like you're talking to yourself, but it's like the intuition in a sense, but it's coming from somebody else. Can you kind of go into detail a little bit about, how that sounds and how you should respond if you hear that?
We explained it perfectly. Usually what happens to me is I'll get a strong feeling, and then my ears will start ringing, and then it's almost like an opening in my inner ear, like an expansion, like a whoosh or something. And I go, they're here. The ships are here, and my body reacts to it. My left side starts really tingling when the Pleiadians coming in, or if the Andromedans, or there's an Orion Council of Light, and those guys, if they come in, my right side starts activating. So most of the Pleiadian energy is feminine. It's more of a matriarchal situation there. So it usually comes in on the left side, and most of the contacts are female in the beginning, because there's reasons for it. If you have this really powerful male being appear before you, most people take a defensive stance, and it freaks them out, and they go, "Oh, what was that?" And it freaks them out.
Yeah.
But this total, beautiful, loving female, appearing next to you, people are not as defensive, or not as and they're more apt to listen, or they're not so fearful when that happens. So most of the contacts in the beginning are female, and it is the energy I feel is, I just started getting all blissed out. I'll feel tingling on the crown or the third eye, area, and just when the Pleiadians come, you get real giddy. The energy gets real giddy, really, really high. And when the Andromedans come in, who are mythologically known as archangels, because they're 8 to 10 feet tall and they have magnetized light bodies, they're huge beings. When they come in, boy, it's just like down to business energy. It's not. It's loving, but it's very, very get on with it. Kind of energy, but they all have different energy signatures, and the telepathy is just kind of a direct knowing and more of a feeling than hearing words, and you'll get something like, okay, is it my highest and best good to do this, and all of a sudden you get this huge energy hit, go that direction, do this, and it's more like that. Well, if I really spend time and sit and focus, I can get a lot of information, with them. But I have to get into a meditative state. And I usually, the best place I get information, believe it or not, is in the bathtub.
Yeah.
Because you're in a nice, warm, water conducts energy. It's a very safe space, and I can go into really deep meditation in the bathtub, and that's where I've had a lot of my experiences or out in nature, like sitting up next to a tree or something.
There's a lot of people having a lot of different synchronistic things going on in their life. Have you seen that to be connected with the ships as well? Like maybe if that when one's close by or anything like that, or they're trying to tell you something when you see the synchronistic stuff? Is it something that we should pay attention to?
Well, they bring people together all the time, and they bring people here. They guide people up here a lot, you know, to get understanding of who they are and what their star family is and why they're here and things like that. And they don't really tell you what you're supposed to do or things like that. They don't work that way, you know. But they'll give you insights, you know, as to who you are, why you're here, and why the things happen to you in your life, and how they prepared you for where you are now. And they're very good at healing the past and letting go of old wounds and traumas and things like that. So that's what we focus on mainly here, is teaching techniques to make your own contact, and also healing techniques to, you know, heal any wounds and traumas and wrong conclusions from past experiences, and then help people make their own personal contact once the blocks are removed.
Okay. All right, we're going to take another call. I believe I have a call from Illinois. Is this Matt?
It is.
How's it going, man?
Pretty good.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks. I had 3 quick questions. First off, how have your views and beliefs on the origin of this earthly genetic strain of humans changed and evolved since contact began in your life?
As far as DNA shifts and patterns, I
just mean like the origins of Earth humans.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have a different view. There's, you know, people have the Sitchin view where the gods, you know, came down and they manipulated a knuckle dragger, you know, to create a slave race and things like that. But that's only one part of the story, because the Earth's been colonized many times, and she's gone through cataclysms where people had to start over, and you know, major, super advanced, very spiritually and technologically races have been here on the planet. You know, they built the pyramids and things like that, you know, which weren't done with slaves, you know, as much as they'd want you to believe. But and they're very old. They're much older, and they're finding pyramids below the pyramids, and even older cultures. So, but we've come and gone. There's been many star nations that have been here on the Earth that have created colonies. Atlantis and Lemuria were Palladian colonies, or Mu, that were here. You know, that happened after the Anunnaki came and did their thing, and then the cataclysms came and wiped out most of the people. But you know, you hear those stories in the Bible where the sons of God saw the women of men to be fair and took them as wives and things like that. So we're a real mixed genetic soup down here of the Star Nations and the Anunnaki and the Neanderthal guy that was the knuckle dragger that was jumped up. So we're a real diverse genetic soup down here, as well as all the plant life too, and animal life here as well. A lot of that was brought in from other Star Nations, and you know, the old program they're taught in school about, you know, random mutation and evolution and stuff like that just doesn't add up when you look at the diversity that's here and the timelines and things like that.
Before I go into the next question, do you happen to know any of those the plants or animals that are not native to this Earth but that were brought in from other systems? Like, do you know any offhand?
Well, you know, I'll tell you an interesting story I was told. I connected with this being, and her name was Plumaria. And I go, why? I go, you have a name of a flower, you know? And she said, my dad created that. And these beings are thousands of years old. And she said that her dad was tinkering with genetics and making the different types of plumaria tree and the flowers and things like that thousands and thousands of years ago. And you think about it, you go, well, wait a second, these guys are living, 2,000 or 6,000 years, some of them, you know, it depends on their evolution. And this is a fifth dimensional being, you know, that I don't know how long their lifespans are going. And she's Palladian, you know. I'm just going, this is all tying together now. Why? I'm understanding why she would have a name of an earth flower. when I heard that, I questioned it right away. I said, well, why would you be, if you're from the Pleiades, why do you have the name of a flower here on Earth? You know, so I think the plumaria tree is one. There's probably all kinds of things that have been brought here and tinkered with, and the different varieties of things have been tinkered with. I couldn't be specific on all of them.
Wow. What are your best recommendations for trying to get the attention of unidentified craft and to attempt to get them to land and say hi?
I think the best one is to set the intent and meditate on that and put it out there that you'd really like to connect, with the benevolent ones. Be real specific about it and focus on love and joy and bliss and send it to them. You could be specific and say, I want to meet, the benevolent Pleiadians or the Andromedans or whatever. But you have connections on a soul level, that you have soul family groups, that you might be more connected into the Pleiadians or the Tsarions or the Arcturians or one of the other groups. And so, if you find yourself staring at the Pleiades or the Orion system or something like that, you might be more connected to those. And there's a lot of bad press about Orion. Everybody says everything negative comes from Orion. Orion's a huge system, and there's a lot of different races there. And the Lyrians actually colonized that system a long time ago, which are us, basically. And so they're one of the root races that go throughout Orion. But there's a lot of wars in Orion, and there's a lot of stuff that happened there with some tall grays and reptilians, and that didn't turn out so well.
Out of all the various crafts that you have experienced and observed, including the ones in higher dimensional trips, what is the approximate ratio that between artificial, mechanical, metal craft and movable, organic creations, or even higher or spiritual, pure spirit chariots?
Yeah, the higher beings use ships that are either living. The ships are actually conscious themselves and they're organic, and that allows them to move through dimensions and jump dimensions, just like, our bodies are actually a ship itself, and we can take this body and actually jump dimensions with it. And people have a hard time understanding that, but lamas and yogis have been doing that for a long time. They've been bilocating and jumping dimensions and things like that. But and there's ships that are just pure energy, and there's energy beings on them. There's ships that are magnetic light ships, and the beings have magnetic light bodies on them. And then there's ships that are just pure consciousness. They actually create the ship with their own consciousness, and there might be several beings together that are creating kind of a Merkaba ship. So most of the things we're seeing here are the higher dimensional ships, but we are seeing every once in a while we have photographs of ships that are metallic and they have antennas off them. And one ship we saw looked like a aircraft carrier. It was just massive, and it was a golden colored light, that had all these array of antennae on it. But we've seen everything here. We've seen pyramid ships, cylinder ships, just every color, like purple ships, pink ships, green ships. Just ships with just regular flashing lights on them. All kinds of stuff is going on here.
Hey, James, have you seen any of the ships or spirits or whatever you want to call them? I'm not really sure. I've seen some stuff that kind of looks like a phantom. I've seen one that kind of resembled a stingray fly over the trees.
I tell you what's interesting is that Dave Schrader with After Dark Radio, I think it's called After Dark Radio, came out here, and he was blown away. And we saw this ship fly over us that looked like a stingray, and it had the fins like undulating, and you could see through it. And
exactly what I seen.
Yeah, and it was definitely a living organism, but it looked like a stingray, and I have no idea who that group is or what that's about, but it was pretty bizarre.
Was it pretty low above the trees?
It.
How long did it stay around? Was it just like a one-time thing, or was it kind of going back and forth?
It came right over us.
Man.
And
I had the exact same experience while I was seeing some other craft.
Yeah, and I still haven't even looked into that. I should actually ask what that was, but no, it looked very organic. It looked alive.
It kind of resembled, I guess, somewhat. I know there's like a Black Pyramid video on YouTube hovering over a city, and you can kind of see through it. It kind of resembled that a little bit. It was a lot smaller, but it was definitely interesting, and it's definitely, it kind of caught me off guard because I'm looking basically out of the atmosphere, and then there's one right above the trees, flying by you. It's kind of creepy, but neat at the same time.
Yeah. Well, we've been back engineering this stuff the Germans have been doing it, long time ago, probably, I would say maybe even before the 30s, might even be in the 1920s, and they've built some pretty clunky craft, who knows where they're at with it now, but so, we've been back engineering stuff since the 40s, we've been doing all kinds of stuff. So, this technology has been around for a long time, and we have our own, space fleet and black projects and things of that nature. And what's sad is knowing that we have that technology and allowing astronauts to go up on firecrackers and then, explode and then allowing the Earth to be in the condition she's in when we don't need to be burning fossil fuel, and we haven't for a long time. And people don't understand this. You tell people, you could run your car in water, and they look at you sideways like you're nuts. And now that technology is just now finally coming out, where they can split water and run the cars, and that's now pretty much, people that have been following it. I think there's a guy in the Philippines that actually has an engine, that runs on water, and another guy has, I think, a magnetic motor that he doesn't need anything. So that's going to come out, but people can't handle the fact that, hey, you don't need gas, you don't need to go to all these wars, and guess what? You don't even need tires, because most of this stuff is, we've had anti-gravity and counter-gravity for a long time, and we have the technology to, get up here and just, say, I think I'll have breakfast in Australia, zip over there, and then come back and be back before noon, So that exists right now, and there's no reason why we should be driving around in these gas belching, polluting vehicles, smashing us into each other on the highways and and things like that.
Yeah, there was a guy on the news locally who actually he built a motorcycle that actually ran off of water, and he said he did it for under $2,000, and anybody can do it. And they was actually showing it on the news locally in Alabama.
Wow.
It's definitely out there.
It's not that complicated, and once you have a lot of it's about using frequency to split the water, and once you understand the frequencies and you can split the water, then it's very easy, and it doesn't take a lot of power to split the water. But the old way of doing it took too much power to split the water, so it wasn't feasible. But they've come a long way with that one. But that's kind of a dinosaur technology to what I've seen, and actually held in my hand. I've held technologies that, I had something the size of a pie plate that had 9 coils in it. Each coil put out 25,000 watts, and it was counter-gravity. And actually tried to get that out. There's video of these machines running and everything back in the 90s. And I played it at the International UFO Congress and things like that, and our life just went to hell after that. I mean, we were threatened. Families, the inventor, his families were threatened. His lab was blown up, and it just got real ugly.
Let me ask you this. I've been seeing on the news here lately a lot. I've actually got a laser pointer, and I know you got a pretty nice one, too. I've been seeing on the news here lately that people have been getting in trouble for using those laser pointers, shooting them at helicopters and stuff, and they've been coming down to get the GPS coordinates and calling the police station, and people have been getting arrested for shining those laser pointers at aircraft. Have you been seeing anything about that?
Right. Oh, yeah, that's bad news. You shouldn't do that. You should, like here, we have lasers here, but we use them very discriminately, and And if something has any kind of a blinking light on it whatsoever, and we're not going to be, and we don't shoot anything at the craft itself. We actually surround it, do a circle around it. And so it's, there should be some discretion, definitely there, because you could blind a pilot or a passenger, or it's not a good idea.
If somebody's in the market, is there any certain one they should get? Because I know there's so many of them out there and don't really know which one to get. Some of them are $10, some of them are $1,000.
Oh yeah, you can get a good laser for under $200. If you shop around and just look at the milliwatts on it. Wicked Laser has them. But one of the things, a lot of the Homeland Security is snagging these lasers when you buy them in China and try to bring them in. You'll get a little note in the box saying, "Thanks for the laser, Homeland Security."
Oh man! So I guess they're out of China then, the Wicked Lasers.
Yeah, most of the lasers are coming out of China.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, there's a lot going on. A lot of different things we're seeing in the heavens, which is the Hebrew word for sky. It's the same thing. Heavens and sky is the same word. Let me ask you this: have you ever checked out the work of Patrick Cook with BibleUFO.com? Have you ever been to his website?
No, I might have. I'm not sure. Has he been around for a while, or?
Yeah, he's done a little bit of stuff on ancient aliens. Definitely, he's a biblical theologian. Basically got blackballed from the religion aspect of it, and just been doing some stuff in ufology and stuff. Yes, BibleUFO.com. He's one of my favorite researchers, and I just found out that he passed away in November. Yeah, so,
he's probably there with him right now.
Yeah, everybody listening, just go check out his website, BibleUFO.com. Anybody who wants to look it up, have anything as far as UFOs and psychokinesis, telekinesis, and things like that, that's actually mentioned in the Bible. He has an awesome website, hundreds of pages on there. It's an awesome site. Definitely just wanted to plug that. He's an awesome
you know
researcher.
What? I don't know how much time we got, but I can tell you a really quick story that happened to me that shifted my life. Is my father passed away a few years ago, and he came out of New Mexico, and he told me of an incident where a ship landed right on the highway in front of him, and just sat there for a while, and it nothing really happened. They just got out and they were standing there, and everybody was watching it, and then it just took off. And he used to point UFOs out to us, but he was a dentist, and he didn't want to lose credibility and things, so he just never talked about it to others, but he told us about it. And my grandmother was involved in Roswell and things of that nature, so they all know that was a real event, down there. She knew the first responders and the sheriffs, and when they saw the ships, and when they came back after that experience, she said they couldn't even hold a coffee cup, and they were white as a sheet, and their hands were shaking, and she said that doesn't happen when a balloon comes down. But she knows the real story, but we've had it all of our lives, but not really pressed on us or anything, just open to it. But when he died, his last words, believe it or not, were "beam me up." And he took a long deep breath and he said, "Beam me up," and then he was gone. And so I'm sitting there going, why would he say "beam me up"? I go, this is bizarre, why, like "beam me up, Scott." He always had a sense of humor, kind of. But I went outside and I took pictures above the house, and I got the film developed, and there was this beautiful turquoise light chip right over the house when he crossed over. And so, I'm just going, wait a second, maybe heaven might be a lot more complicated than we've been told. And, maybe in another dimension that, maybe he went to another dimension where he's in an energy body or a light body or whatever else, and he could be on that light ship. And I really started kind of thinking about this, going, I had to start realizing that, maybe the angels may not be, just wearing wings, and robes. Maybe they have light ships. You know, maybe the other mansions, you know, of God we don't know of, or the other kingdoms might just be some extremely advanced beings that have extreme technology as well, and work with the energies of creation, and maybe they've mastered a lot of those energies. You know, so when you keep expanding this out and you keep having these experiences, you have to kind of drop the old program of light and dark, or heaven and hell, and just, you know, it's just a lot more vast than that, and a lot more expanded, and there's just a lot more that goes on in the other planes and dimensions than just, you know, floating around on a cloud with the harp. You know, to me that would bore the hell out of me, to be honest with you.
Yeah, there's some different footage of NASA in space of just what looks to be like different lights just shooting in every direction. Some of them are going, stopping, making 90-degree turns, stopping and speeding up and doing all types of crazy things. And I mean, there's hundreds of them in some of the videos.
A lot of those are just energy ships or light ships. It's full of it out there. Space is, you know, full of it. There's beings walking right alongside of us, and we don't even know it. They're just outside of our ability to see them. You know, they're in a different position in the electromagnetic light spectrum, and we can just see a little small portion of visible light with our own eyes, but there's all these other things happening right alongside of us that we just don't have the ability to see.
Whenever I see that video, I totally get the sense of those are living entities. Those are the spirits or the angels or whatever. Even in you know, Enoch, it talks about the angels being made out of fire. And it says, as they wish, they can come to earth and take on bodies for themselves as they wish. And even in Psalms and Hebrews, it says the Lord makes his ministers as a flame of fire. So when you look up in the heavens and you see these fiery chariots, you know, going back and forth in the sky, you know, I can't help but think that they're living entities, and they are the angels, or they are the departed spirits from earth, either or, you know, or a mixture of both.
All connected. There's you know, beings that here they just phase in and out. And we had a Japanese monk here that he was very adept, and he spends, you know, he does 21-day retreats, no food, no water, in a cave, just to heighten his ability, his spiritual abilities. And he came here to the ranch and actually took some incredible photographs. He took a photograph in the self-mastery class of Mary appearing right over the group. And he didn't even know who she was. And I saw him take the picture, and I see him going, oh, he's all excited, you know, and I go, what'd you get, you know? And I went back there and I looked at it and I go, oh my God, you know, it's on the website. And then he got pictures of these 12-foot tall feline beings, like six-dimensional feline beings that appeared, and he got a photograph of Kuan Yin. And one of the beings I work with, which is an ascended version of Ezekiel, actually, and who ascended, he actually soul merged with a feminine energy by the name of Cassia, and ascended to the you know, he's like a seventh dimensional being. And so I asked him, I said, can you meditate and ask Ezekiel to come to you and take a picture of him? And so he did, and he got a picture of this huge golden ball of energy with wings coming out of it. And you know, and he's out there just laughing and just all blissed out. And he showed me the picture, you know. So what's interesting is that, you know, we're actually getting hard evidence of these higher dimensional beings appearing to us, and during some of the transpersonal release sessions, the counseling we do here, we can actually now videotape the energy of the beings coming into the room. And it looks like a golden tornado of light, you know, and everybody's bodies pixelate out and turn into white light. And that's on the website, too.
Yeah, I've seen that. That's amazing. One thing I wanted to ask you, hoaxers, have you ever had people contact you and try to tell you their stories or whatever the case is, and they were just maybe doing it as a prank or trying to pull one over you or sell a book that you just knew was not legit?
Oh, yeah, a lot. And you can feel them, you know, you can feel the energy. I've had people actually corner me in an elevator and just try to sell their experience or their book, and right away my inner sensitivity buttons were just going, this does not feel right, you know. This isn't really. And then later on they're proven to be a hoax.
Yeah.
They wanted me to sign on to it and support their work, and I just said, I'm sorry. I said, you know, that's your experience, and I totally, whatever is going to come out of that experience is good for you, but it's not my experience, so I can't really say it happened or didn't happen because I didn't see it. It's not my experience. And they got really upset at me for not promoting their book and not signing on. And I just said, well, I can't.
Yeah.
I can't say it happened or it didn't happen, you know? It's like,
yeah.
You know, it didn't happen to me.
Well, just at least put your name on it, you know?
Yeah. And I've written forwards for people that I do believe in, you know, that I do believe are really sincere and that are service-oriented people and trying to help, you know, awaken humanity in the earth. And so I have written some forwards for certain people.
There's somebody in the chat room, and he's mentioning the caller from the tape that exposes Area 51, and I think he's talking about the frantic caller, and I think he's talking about the Coast to Coast episode where the guy called Art Bell and was calling from a payphone and said he was being chased by these, you know, people in government, but they were really ETs and they were out to destroy mankind and everybody's screwed and things like that. And it's funny because actually before we came on the show, I had a friend of mine send me a band link of a band, and they were sampling that, and there's actually been a couple bands that did it. Tool did it, you know, this other band he sent me, but you know, just for everybody listening, I want you guys to know that was proven to be a hoax as well. That was fake.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people like to push that like it's this, you know, crazy thing, and you know, like the guy was telling the truth, but yeah, the guy came out, that was actually a hoax. That was a joke. So.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll have stuff on that's just cutting edge things, you know, and I'll put it out there, but I'll put a disclaimer on it. And I'll say, look, you know, this is what's going around the net. We're going to look into it, and but you know, we'll get back to you. And then I get all this hate mail, you know, like that's a hoax, that's this, that's that, you know, and I can't believe you. And I go, hey, you know, we're a newsletter, and we need to put out what's going around, and we're going to do some research on it, and a lot of times what happens is people will do the research for me and show me where, you know, where this was hoaxed and things like that. But, I mean, there's some really good hoaxes out there that you know, it looks really legit and real. And a recent one was in Japan where they had this footage, and it looked good all the way up until the ship landed and the gray got out of it and was standing there. And then you're going, God, this just... It just doesn't seem, there's something about it, you know, that just doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And sure enough, you know, that I guess it turned out to be somebody who's trying to make a movie or something.
Let me get your take on the UFO that was seen over the temple in Jerusalem.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was definitely real, and then a lot of CGI came after that, and that's what they do, is that they'll have real footage, and there'll be a lot of witnesses and things like that, and then they flood YouTube and whatever with fake ones just to muddy the water, to bury a real event. But I'll tell you what really happened there is that there were some beings, and they're from Sirius, that came in, and they actually changed the whole frequency of that area. And that area with the Wailing Wall and the Dome of the Rock and everything is so steep in religion and separation and the old images of fearful God and, you know, wretched suffering and all that, just that nonsense that creates separation, the heavy old programs, that they had to go there and they had to totally change the frequency of the area and set a new template in there. And that's what all that energy was about the ship. You know, when those energy bursts were going off the ship, they were changing the frequency of the area and unlocking all that old program that's keeping people, you know, in separation and warring and things of that nature.
We got some people in the chat room. They're wanting to know, what do you see in the future for America?
Boy, that's a tough one. If we, people need to realize that there's two Americas, and there's the United States corporation America, which is a mess. I mean, they are just there to control and dominate and extort, and they're not in our highest and best good. And then there's the Republic, the original America. And if we can restore the Republic and get out of this, Uniform Commercial Code, or UCC program, and get back into the common law, we can really make some huge leaps and bounds. And that is being done on other levels. There's a lot of people working on that legally, trying to do that legally. They're really trying to push us into a civil war. The powers that be want the civil war. They want to create the chaos, because out of chaos comes their program, So that they have that problem reaction solution. So they create the problem, we react to it, and then they come in and solve it, So anyway, I would be very leery about. I believe we need to maintain the Constitution and the Second Amendment, and we need to get rid of that NDA, that where they can grab you anytime, anywhere, and keep you indefinitely, and you have no rights whatsoever. We need to get rid of the Patriot Act and all of these things that are unconstitutional, and restore our right to privacy and our right to freedom of speech and our right to assembly. They can't just keep bringing out the agencies and beating people and arresting people for assembling and speaking their voices. We have to go back to the original Bill of Rights, and those are divine rights. It's not the Constitution that gives us those rights; it's the Creator. And we need to get back to, like I was saying, universal principles, and universal law, and then things are going to look great. But as long as the banksters are in control, and if they keep going down that road, it's not looking good at all. Unless the people have a huge awakening, and that's what I kind of see happening. I'm hoping for an evolution, versus a revolution. And if we do have a revolution, I'm hoping it's a peaceful one, and that we can do it in a way that's in the highest and best good of everybody.
I think it's really going to come from a higher power with some help. That's actually going to have to change it, because the guys who are running things now, new older guys, it's just not a good thing right now. And I think for a while I was about the peaceful, people, rising up peacefully and things like that. But I really think that we kind of seen all we're going to see of that with the whole Occupy movement. People coming together in unity and peaceful change and things like that. And we see what happened. The cops come in at 2 a.m. when everyone's asleep, and they come in and they beat everybody up and spray them with pepper spray and smoke them out and get them out of the town squares and stuff, except when it's in a bigger spot. But I think that's like the biggest rally for change we've seen in a long time, and just how that came and went so fast, and all the people who was involved. I mean, you had bankers, you had police, you had lawyers, you had doctors. Everyone was involved with that, saying, look, we need a change, and the way the system is going now, we need to change it. And it caught the media for a while, and it seemed like, a good thing, but then we see how the media took it and actually spent it and said, these people have no agenda, they're just hippies everywhere, and nobody knows what they're doing, there is no leader, blase, and just kind of, kind of demonize the whole thing. And I think that was like the closest thing that we were and are going to see as far as a peaceful protest, or, to rise up,
Well, it's going to happen again and again. I'll tell you what's going on the higher levels is that there's grids, grids of consciousness and energy. And the old tyrant grid, whatever you want to call it, the three-dimensional grid that they've been running is just falling apart. And the tyrants are not frequency specific to where the Earth is evolving and going, and their program, their grid, you might say, it's holding their world together, is collapsing, and it's imploding in on itself. And a lot of them are having physical problems and just dropping. They're having heart attacks because their hearts are constricted. They're having all kinds, they have all this anger and because the livers are failing. They're having all these serious problems right now because they can't even maintain their physical bodies, with the pressures that are coming in. And there is a huge alignment coming on with the galactic plane or galactic core, which is what the 2012 thing was about. But that was the beginning. I mean, the energy started, basically on 12/12/2012. It's the beginning of a massive shift and evolutionary leap that we're in right now, and it's going to get real crazy up till this summer. There's going to be a lot of earth changes and things of that nature happening very quick, and a lot of social economic changes. So with this ninth wave of unity consciousness coming through, it's exponential. It's getting stronger and stronger, and the people that are not aligning with it and rising to the occasion are basically not going to be here. And it's by their own choice. It's nobody punishing them. It's that they've just chosen, not to go with the program. And I think some people didn't choose to walk this all the way through. They just came here for certain lessons. And some people chose to walk this all the way through and help as many as they can. And so on a soul level, there's all kinds of things going on, but I just don't see any possible way that this old guard is going to continue, or business as usual. And the separation game is coming to an end, and this elitist greed and unbridled greed and lust for power and wealth is imploding on itself, and it's no longer fashionable. The people used to look up to politicians. Now they just shake their head and they're not buying the lies anymore.
Yeah.
So telepathy and direct knowing is increasing, and people are waking up, and it's because the old grid is going down, and the new higher consciousness and energy is coming in, and all these higher dimensional beings are supporting that and behind that. And we have to do our part here on the earth, as the ground crew. It's not all going to be done for us, but it is part of our evolution to join the rest of the universe in peace and to end, this reign of tyranny.
I believe we have another caller. They've been online for a minute. Let me see if they're there. This call is from Eastern Ontario. You there?
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Hey, what's up? Who we speaking with?
My name's Tyler from Petawawa, Ontario.
How's it going, Tyler? You got a question for James?
Yeah, I was just wondering, if your galactic sources had anything specific to say to humanity right now. Do they have a message for us, or are they just kind of watching from upstairs kind of thing?
Yeah, it's kind of like get on with it. It's like,
yeah, they want us to move, basically.
Yeah, they're like cosmic cheerleaders, and they're sending us inspiration, and they are helping us quite a bit in ways that we don't even know of. I mean, they've been blocking kill shots from the sun. They've been, kind of chilling out some major earthquakes and fault lines, and they've been doing a lot that we don't even know about to mitigate, some of the changes.
Huh. I didn't know that the sun was damaging. You always hear that the more coronal mass ejections is like an energy boost for us. I didn't realize that it had any negative effect.
Well, too much, of anything can, and when people aren't ready, can cause a problem. But you're right. Any kind of influx of energy is going to assist the planet. But they're kind of trying to get as many people through as possible, and if we had a kill shot, it would kind of really put a damper on evolution here.
Right. Just one more question. There's talks of the critical mass point being hit, and talks of heaven having a green light. Do you know anything about what will happen if we hit critical mass?
Well, definitely, we are moving in that direction, and I think there's going to be a tipping point where everything just goes, and we're just done with the old world, and I don't know how that's going to turn out. I think it's going to be different for each individual, because I think some people are actually going to be blown into the fourth dimension and take a while to get through that. Other people are going to be going straight into the fifth dimension. It just depends on your frequencies, on how you're going to adjust to this energy. But that alignment with galactic plane is happening right now, and the cosmic ray index is going off the scale, and we're getting hit with huge solar flares, and we've got about 500 bursts of energy like gamma rays and all these other rays hitting the planet right now, when it used to be maybe 50 a day. So it's up to 500. So it's undeniable. We're in it, and I think, let's say somebody's living along the coast, and Mother Nature decides to break loose, on one of the fault lines there. Their experience, might, their ascension might be, floating to the surface and then keep going from there. Whereas another person that's living in nature, on higher elevation is going to have a different experience. So it's all about choices that we make, and our frequency is how we're going to experience this shift.
Huh. Thanks a ton, man. That was awesome.
Oh, you're welcome. It's funny. What I was hearing from one of the masters said, some of the people are going to be hit by a brick, and others are going to be hit by a feather. Yeah, with these, and it depends on your frequency. And I think the masters are going to get hit by a brick here, real soon.
Imagine. Thanks so much for everything, man. That was awesome.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thanks for calling in, man.
Totally, man. Peace.
All right, brother. Yeah, James, that was awesome. That was a good call. Let me ask you this: with the spiritual work that you guys are doing at the ranch, can you tell us a little bit about the importance of breath work, and as far as getting into meditation, or is there an importance to it?
There really is. There's a lot of techniques. A lot of them come out of the yoga practices that can help. There's the fire breathing. There's all kinds of different breathings, and we have learned quite a few through practice of Qigong and things of that nature. A lot of techniques, like most people are familiar with the airbender theories and things like that, where you work with the elements.
Oh, yeah.
And we teach that here. We teach a lot of those techniques here, and we've been doing that for quite some time. So I think all of those practices, like the Qigong and yoga and breath work and just getting out in nature as much as you can, and meditating is they're all helpful. And you just have to choose. It's like when everybody's going up the mountain, they all take different paths, but they all end up at the top. It's the same way. So there's many paths up the mountain.
Yeah.
Just choose one. And with me, I've chosen most of them. I've done most of the paths. Yeah. And with a lot of different cultures. I studied Native American spirituality, and I studied and from India I did yoga for like 11 years, and studied with yogis, and I studied with lamas, and studied all the different ways. And what I found out is I had different names for the same thing, and everybody comes from the same source, and everybody returns to the same source, and that's pretty much the bottom line. You can't get away from that.
Yeah, I think there's a reason why a lot of these stories repeat themselves, whether it's the story of the Savior who came and died for his people and had the 12 disciples, was crucified, was baptized, actually walked on water, had power coming from the hem of his garment, and all these things kind of through a lot of different customs. I think there's a reason for that. And not only that, I think there's a scripture that says, in the last days I will pour out my spirit on all flesh. And in the Christian church, we understand what we would call, the breath work and things like that. We actually understand that as being the Holy Spirit, when that intense joy comes upon you. And that's the name for it, in the Christian church. And, that's what a lot of people call it. But it's the same thing as what's called the Kundalini, which is coming from India. It's the same power and the same experience that you have. You get filled with this immense joy, and it cleans up the things on the inside of you that you can't physically touch, whether it's the hate, the bitterness and stuff, and it all gets taken away by this, what's called the fire of the Holy Spirit, or the fire of the Kundalini, and it's called different things in different parts of the world,
Well, I'll tell you an interesting story. You talked to Nate here, and I don't think he minds if I share it. But he was here, and we were doing, when he first got here, we were introducing him to what we do and everything. And so we were doing that transpersonal release session with him, and actually his main teacher and guide was Jesus, who came in for him. And all of a sudden I see Jesus standing there in front of him, and he's actually, well, I'm in front of him, and Jesus is right behind him, energetic, and I see this being, and he's just like moving his hands and doing these movements, and I'm going, holy smokes, and I'm watching him holding his hands like mudras and everything, and Nate's just flying all over the place going, oh my God, and this energy's going through him, and he's having all these like incredible openings. It was just an amazing experience. And at the end of it, it may sound blasphemous. I go, Jesus Christ, he's practicing Qigong. He's doing Qigong, and so it's funny because what happened is that if you trace back the origins of Qigong and these ancient forms, they go back to Egypt. And that's his origin, and he went through the mystery schools. He went through all the Egyptian mystery schools, went to India, went to that. He learned from all these masters and taught what he knew at the same time. So it's kind of interesting. When I saw that, it tied everything together. But the last thing, he was standing behind him in spirit, and he was holding the mudra for fire, the symbol for fire, and he was just holding this energy, and Nate was just blissed out, going, oh my God, what is this? And then so I go, wait a second. Then I thought about it, and it said, in the Bible they talked about John the Baptist, and he said there should come a great one, and he'll baptize through fire and spirit, not by water, but through fire and spirit. And so here he's using this energy, this spiritual energy, and he's holding the hand signals for fire. And you'll see a lot of statues that are carved where he's standing there with his hand up, and his fingers are together, his pointing finger and thumb are together, and he's holding this position, and it's the mudra for fire, spirit. And so it all ties in together when you understand all the different cultures and you understand the ancient practices. It all comes together, but unfortunately religions like to separate things, and cultures like to separate things, and then fight with each other, over images and doctrines and books and things like that. But in the end, it's all one.
Exactly. Once you can move past the religion and move past the titles and your perception of it, we're all looking at the same thing. We're just calling it something different according to our belief system or what we've been taught and told. And it all produces the same substance. If it's a experience that moves you closer to God and closer to nature and closer to your brothers, to be the best person you can be, then I think that's a good experience.
Yeah, I can go and sit with my Native American brothers. I'm part Cherokee. My great grandmother was Cherokee. Or I can go sit with the Tibetans, and I can do meditation and prayer with them, or I can go hang out with the lamas and the yogis, and I can be at peace at all these places, and actually participate and have incredible experiences, at all these places, and that's really where we need to get. And once we've done that, then we can start joining the rest of the universe, because if you can't handle the diversity here, with the different skin colors and cultures and religions, if you can't master that and be at peace with that, how are you going to do that, in these other realms where beings don't look anything at all like us? Some don't. You've got to, get your self-mastery going, or you're not going to be able to handle, some of these other, dimensions and experiences.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've always, kind of held on to that from what you've said as far as having the judgmental attitude. If you see a spirit or you see an entity or you see an alien, whatever you want to call them, that looks different, not to be afraid or not to be offended, because kind of like playing on the whole racism thing or just judging somebody because they look different. You need to try to accept everybody for who they are and what they are. I wanted to ask you, too, I know a while back I heard you mention that you guys were going to try maybe set up some type of video conference with some of the spiritual work that you guys are doing where people can participate from their own home. Did you guys ever look into that at all? Are y'all doing it yet?
Yeah, we did that. We did a lot of meditations, earth healing meditations, and healing for Japan, and actually worked with Khan, who works over there. He's a monk over there in Japan, and other people. We kind of orchestrated, together, and he asked us to send him as much help as possible. So we're working with monks over there at the same time, but. We did do a lot of that. Our time has really been spent up lately just dealing with legal matters, unfortunately, because there are certain elements that are doing all they can to close the ranch. But that's coming to an end. We've actually aligned ourselves with Divine Province, which has it's a very powerful organization, and become ambassadors and have driver's license, international driver's license, and we've totally moved out of this system completely because that was the only thing we could do because the system would not accept us anyway whatsoever, and our local boys are doing everything they could to close our doors for really no reason. They have, there's no complaints, there's no injured party. They have, this place is a pristine environment. Everything is working perfectly. We had environmental impact reports, and they passed with flying colors. There's no reason whatsoever for them to continue to harass us, but they just, they create problems where none exist. And because we aren't just Baptists, we're a big red flag. So we're having to deal with those matters. But I think. This week we'll probably have that. This next week we have one more supposedly court appearance on Tuesday, but I think that's going to be nipped in the bud, and then we're done. But then we're going to put a lot of energy into that type of getting the message out and getting the 2 radio shows going, and we have 2 radio shows right now that we're doing out of here, which is kind of an outreach thing. But
there's some people asking in the. We got some people asking in the chat about some information about coming up to the ranch. Are you still taking people if they want to come up and experience at the ranch?
We are, but we had to go because of the legal problems. We had to go private. We couldn't be public anymore, and so we had to change things just to stay out from under their wing. And so now we are a private ranch, but people can get a private invitation, by emailing or calling us, and then they have to go through a couple more hoops. It's just because of the legal problems that we're having. Before I was open to everybody. I go, hey, come up, have your own experience, and it's caused me a lot of problems, because for some reason this society really frowns on people just being loving and kind and allowing and helping people have their own experience and healing. There's for some reason our powers that be now take a dim view of that.
Yeah. It's very unfortunate, man. I appreciate all the work that you're doing. Like I said, I've been following your work for probably, 3.5 years now, ever since I've been having experiences and turning people onto your work and everything, your videos. So definitely keep up the good work. I appreciate you calling in.
Yeah, definitely. And I love your work too. And I've watched a lot of your the videos that you're putting out and everything else. And I think it's awesome. Keep up the good work. You're definitely divinely inspired.
Hey, that means a lot, man. I appreciate it. I don't know if Nate showed you, but did he show you the one that I used from your Coast to Coast appearance? I used a little sample of you at the end. Did he happen to show you that?
Oh, he did. Yeah, I thought it was great. And, you can probably take something off of this interview and throw it in there, too.
Oh, yeah, definitely, man. Definitely looking forward to that, man. It's part of the art. It's amazing, and it's touching a lot of people from all walks of life. Whether they listen to hip-hop or listen to conscious music in general, they can understand the message and see the visuals that I use and stuff, and they're touched by it. So, you've inspired me to do my art, man, and I hope I've inspired you and helped inspire everybody listening. So thanks for calling in.
Yeah, you definitely have, and I know you've kind of opened the eyes of a lot of people. And actually coming from a religious background, I think that's that's very commendable and quite courageous to break out of that box and realize that there's just a much bigger story going on.
Yeah, it is. And it's, I mean, it was hard. It definitely was hard doing it, having my own experiences, knowing it to be my truth, and, wanting to share it. And then I reached that point where they were like the same people that I was actually inspiring to go out and, be street preachers and things like that we used to do. And I've inspired those people, and those same people who looked up to me turn around saying, hey, you're a devil worshiper now. We can't listen to you. You promote James Gilliland. You promote Jordan Maxwell, Luciferians. And it's like, oh, man. And I just kind of hit that point. It was like, man, do I want to be known? I was a noted person in the community and things like that, talking with the youth and things. And now I'm a so-called devil worshiper. Is this how I want my legacy to end or whatever, So it was a real hard transition. But so like I said, thanks for, you doing everything that you do and, sticking your neck out there to be poked fun and made fun of and all this kind of stuff, because you go against the agenda. They want to push fear and unbelief as well. But you've definitely inspired me, and there's a bunch of people in the chat listening, so I know that they're here for a reason. So like I said, man, thanks for everything you do.
You just have to they're where they're at. They're doing the best they can with what they know. And unfortunately, they are pushing fear and guilt and judgment and all the things that Jesus warned us against and told us not to do. So, I mean, here you're being true to your heart and true to your soul and working straight from spirit and letting that come through you. And they're doing the exact opposite. So I would have to say that you're much more aligned with Jesus and Christ consciousness, and I would say they're pretty much doing the Antichrist thing. So it's whenever you point a finger at somebody, there's three fingers pointing back, and you can't accuse others of what you yourself are doing and still walk in integrity.
Yeah, well, like I said, man, it was an honor to talk to you. I've been waiting to talk to you for a while. I'm glad you had the chance to come on. Definitely like to have you back on again. I'm going to give your website out. It's ECETI.org, ECETI.org. You guys can go watch videos, pictures of James and ECETI Ranch, and there's actually an awesome picture of James doing a Tibetan meditation, and you can see him actually leaving his body and see his astral field around him. It's a pretty amazing picture, and he's got the pictures of Mary and the different light beings on there. There's also some videos on there I want to talk about where he's seeing these orbs flying around over the children in the field, and they're huge orbs flying everywhere. It's some pretty awesome stuff he's captured on video, so definitely go to ECETI.org, that's ECETI.org, and check out his work and his videos.
You can also go to ECETI Stargate on YouTube. And there's some really
good footage,
just massive light ships flying over.
Some awesome stuff. Well, thanks for calling, James, and we're going to go ahead and end the show.
All right.
And we're going to have you guys back.
If you would like to sponsor the show or advertise on the Mythicist podcast, you can do so by going to www.mythicist.me and click on Sponsor the Show for more info. If you would like to support the show financially, you can do that also by going to mythicist.me and become a monthly supporter. We appreciate your monthly support.